Hey, what's going on? This is Ian from Vetrepreneur Network. Today I'm here with the CEO of Manifold Technology, Chris Finan. Chris, how are you doing?
Great. How you doing?
Can't complain. So, we're going to talk a little bit about your kind of journey to be an entrepreneur, a little bit about your background, and then, what's next with Manifold Technology. So, what did you do in the military?
I was a pilot and an intel officer in the Air Force.
All right, and so you got out back in 2007?
2007, yeah.
And then did you go directly into entrepreneurship? Did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I tried to. It didn't. I was an entrepreneur for a little while. It didn't work out. My business failed. Probably didn't have the support I needed to really make it successful. So I had to go and adapt and do something else for a while.
So when you were kind of like going through kind of the failure piece, was it that you didn't have enough kind of training or education? Like, what was the reason kind of why you think that it didn't work out?
Yeah, I really didn't know what I was doing in retrospect. It was tough to get any kind of funding or support or help refining my product, finding the right customers to really survey and gain traction, and feed that back into my product. So I think in retrospect, I probably just hadn't had enough experience with finding product market fit, knowing what to look for, knowing how to position, knowing how to talk to people. I didn't really know what you needed to be able to create a successful business and revenue model. So maybe I should have gone to business school, but I was ready for practice, and I'd had enough of theory at that point.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of move fast and break things in the military community, right? And it's like, you're gonna try it, and if it doesn't work, you're gonna kind of figure out a way to do what's gonna work. So what was the next step?
So I decided to go back into the government as a civilian. I worked on cybersecurity and policy in the Pentagon, and then on the National Security Council at the White House. I did that for a little while, for about 3 years, and then went over to DARPA and got to work on a cyber warfare R&D effort there called Plan X, Foundational Cyber Warfare. Did that for about a year, and was able to really use that government effort or initiative to really understand the way Silicon Valley works. We were taking best practices from the Valley, a lot of emerging tech, bringing that into the government, and in that process I really got to know some companies out here and realized I really like the way they operate, I like the creativity, and wanted to take my chances on another startup. So I made the leap from government to a little startup. We were a cybersecurity startup, so it was an area that I was really familiar with. Definitely helped with the transition, being able to apply that theoretical knowledge in a more practical way. And we were eventually acquired by Google. So spent a little time at a big company, just long enough to make me realize it reminded me of the military, and just in the bureaucratic sense. And then left Google to start Manifold. Did that about 1.5 years ago.
And let's go back to the timeline a little bit. So the company gets that you're working with gets acquired by Google. How many folks were in that? What was your role?
Yeah, I was the business development lead. We had about 20 people, so pretty small still from as a startup. We'd gotten some funding, and we're working on a really interesting area of tech that Google needed. So it made sense. It made sense for the business, and most of the team is still at Google operating as a unit. But when you go to a big business like that, they don't really need the BD guys anymore. So I did my best to find the right position there, but I was basically unassigned, like the guy from Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Taking amazing lunches and living the big company life, but it wasn't for me.
So is that when you got the? Tell us a little bit about Manifold. So what do you do in the space?
So we provide a new way of controlling data, auditing data, securing data in the cloud. So there's a big push now in the way developers create programs using things like microservices, using very modular components, and that introduces a lot of complexity into the way you can secure systems, secure applications, secure access to data. And we take a lot of that and simplify it by taking cryptography, in this case an emerging technology called blockchain technology. We infuse that into the database itself. We're embedded within the database. We make it really easy to have a perfect audit record and a great way of knowing whether or not your data is secure by sitting in the database itself. We're sitting at that ground truth level and able to, from that, create a perfect audit trail that we provide back to the security people. So whereas in the past, security used to be kind of an outside-in type approach where you try to, it's almost like you're doing target development on a system. You kind of look for indicators and warning and monitor the periphery to see if you can detect what's happening inside. And that's the old way of doing things. Now we're sitting on the inside, seeing what's happening in real time, and from that able to then push alerts and any anomalies to security leads.
So I mean, it sounds like it's pretty basic stuff. I mean, it's not too confusing. I'm surprised an Air Force guy figured it out, but it seems like you're doing pretty well.
We do our best.
So did you think about this while you were at the old company, while you were at Google? Were you working on it at nights? Like, how did you, when did you kind of take the jump and say like, hey, I have this idea and I want to build a company?
No, so we were working on some applied cryptography ideas. I knew that I wanted to do something in applied cryptography. I'm a big believer in never conflating ends and means. And you see that a lot in the government, you see that a lot in the military. And for me, a lot of cybersecurity is really just people building better mousetraps. And I instead I had this vision with my co-founder, who's amazing, former NSA guy. Together we wanted to use security technology as a means to a much greater end. And so for us, embedding within the infrastructure, making things really simple, making this technology an enabler for other things like more efficient compliance, more efficient transactions if you're a bank, that's really been our vision for Manifold. So whether or not we'll be effective really is a question, I think, of execution.
Yeah.
But that's our grand strategy anyway. I've laid it all out for our competitors.
Yeah, it's all right. That'll come out in post. So how did you meet your founder then?
Through another Air Force pilot, a good buddy of mine named Raj Shah, former F-16 pilot, had founded a company named Morta Security. His co-founder and CTO was a gentleman by the name of Rob Seeger, a former NSA guy. They had exited to a company called Palo Alto Networks around the same time. We were acquired by Google.
Palo Alto Networks CEO, also a veteran.
Also a West Pointer, so you got to speak slow to him as well, Mark McLaughlin.
And your co-founder's not a vet?
He's a veteran of the U.S. government,
the
intelligence community.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you see all the time. It's like 6 degrees of separation or Kevin Bacon or whatever. You see, a lot of time you have a military vet who's may or may not be a tech person, but they have civilian co-founder or co-founders.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the team, you have you and him. What's kind of the next point from there?
Yeah, so from there, we had attracted some funding, some institutional backing early. We're very fortunate, having been part of successful startups. It made it a little bit easier to get into that community of VCs and convince people to give us some early seed funding. So they kind of bet on the jockeys and somewhat of the horse. We had the horse kind of sketched out, but not quite running.
Yeah. Did you have an MVP at this point?
No, we had some math and we had some early prototyping, but it was more about IP and ideas at that point.
That's awesome.
And we went out and tested things, and we're very fortunate to connect into a company, an innovation group within a large bank. And they were looking to do some new things. This is the Royal Bank of Canada. And there were a lot of their hypotheses for where they wanted to go with their core infrastructure really aligned with what we were trying to do. They took a shot on us. I ironically, because we had a pretty senior guy at a VC firm, a well-known VC firm, who happens to be a vet, who decided to vouch for us early. So really got to thank him for that. That was great. And it got us into this big bank. They started working with us. They were willing to bet on a really small company, and eventually became our first paying customer. And they're a global 20 bank, so anytime you can get a big global 20 bank as your first marquee customer, makes a big difference, right? It gives you a lot of credibility, which is everything when you're a little company trying to raise money, trying to get other customers. So, and it allowed us to prove out our tech, really learn a lot of important lessons, learn how to scale our tech, and that in turn allowed us to get more money, get more seed funding, and really build up our team. So we're at 11 people as of today. Quite a few vets, as a matter of fact, either veterans of the government and veterans of public service, part of veteran families, really by coincidence. Kind of just certainly go and look for great people, but ended up finding people who had common experiences and were really good problem solvers. So,
yeah, I mean, and what do you know, as a CEO, you're looking for, obviously elite talent to join a small organization where, someone's going to put in 1/12 of the work. They got to be pretty smart. Did you have any problems with building your team or finding the right folks, or was it really like a hire slow situation?
No, I'd say building the human capital is not only the most important thing that I do every day, or try to do every day, but it's also the most difficult. It takes the most of my time, or should anyway. Sometimes it doesn't, and usually when it doesn't take a lot of my time, that's when we make mistakes. So we've definitely made a couple of mistakes. The nice thing is when you're a little company, it's easy to correct mistakes.
Yeah.
So because of that, I tend to have a bias toward action. It's you hear a lot of people talk about this, and I guess only in the last year have I really appreciated what it really means. But culture is the most important thing by far in our company. You ask anybody here, if something's off in the culture, it affects every other element of our business. It slows us down, affects creativity, can block ideas from ever being heard or being brought to fruition through an ideation process. So if the culture's off, that is the core, and from that, all of the other innovation flows. And so you got to keep that, not only get it right, but preserve it. And I found that early on, every hire has a huge impact on that cultural core, and it starts to get a little bit less once you've got that built up and you've reached a certain inflection point. But it's something that we work very hard to preserve, not only through our hiring process, but also then through just the day-to-day interactions of the team, type of work environment, the way we communicate. For a lot of us, it's kind of the way we like to operate as a small unit.
Yeah.
We don't have the huge bureaucracy telling us what to do.
Yep.
So it makes it a little bit easier, but it also means that it can quickly get off track if you're not really attentive to it.
So are we going to have the Manifold 136 slide deck, culture deck coming soon?
Yeah, I think they could have done that, the Netflix deck, they could have done that in like 4 slides.
Yeah.
Which is, if people don't want to be there, if they're not team players, you can ask them to leave. But,
no assholes.
Yeah.
It definitely is. So what's next for Manifold?
So we're trying to raise our A round. This is a big milestone for us. The bar is much higher, so proving that we've got great product market fit, that we're a repeatable and scalable business model. All things that we've really got to up our game to be able to prove that we're there, right, for a big VC firm. So, if we can get this round closed, then we're going to be really scaling up, taking our product to a much wider, broader audience, building out our feature set and marketing and sales and all the stuff that goes with it.
So, and I'm going to take your answer before I ask the question. So, other than networking, because I know you've built a vast network here, what's the one piece of advice or the thing that you would recommend to someone who's either looking to get into entrepreneurship or someone who's already out there who's looking at kind of getting seed funding or turning that next step in their business?
I think being able to really crisply articulate the problem that you're solving and how you're doing it. And when you can do that in about a sentence, that's how you know you probably got it. Especially if people are like, yeah, I get that. If it takes you 2 minutes and it's convoluted, you're not there yet. You're not talking to enough people. You're not surveying the market well enough. And, this is probably criticism myself. You can always do it better.
Yeah.
So networking is the means to that end, but that's sort of the metric. When you can really crisply articulate, you want to call it a value proposition, fine, but it's product, it's here's my problem that I'm solving, here's how I'm doing it, here's who I'm selling to. When you can do that crisply, that's everything. And most seasoned investors, that's what they're queuing in on. Early on, you still need to be able to do that. You got to be able to do it in a way that really gets them excited. But so I'd say more than anything, focus on that and network the hell out of the problem until you've got enough data points to be able to do that crisply. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Chris is working on great things. We're excited to see what's coming out of Manifold here soon. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.